Hi, and thanks for joining in. I'm Chris. I'm the Data and Information Manager at Trustpower. Today, I'll be sharing a bit of our journey towards democratized data, what that means, and how we're working towards achieving that with Snowflake and DBT. So about 2 years ago, I got this cool new job, Data and Information Manager, and I knew what was needed of that role, having been in our internal analyst community for a few years prior to that. But the business we didn't really know what data management could do for us, but we knew that it was a thing. So about the same time I got the new role, we had a digital transformation initiative, which are always fun exercises to be involved in. And it was a series of workshops over about 6 to 8 weeks, where we got the top 2 layers of the company into a room to understand what opportunities the company had to go towards the future and what initiatives we needed to put in place in order to start us on a journey towards those. So I was included in that for a specific area of interest in data. And it was a great opportunity and a number of workshops to start to understand big picture, what do we want to achieve as a business? So we started looking at data warehousing. What does that mean? So I've got a few books by Ralph Kimball sitting on my desk at home, back from 30 years ago. This is the foundations of what data warehousing is about. And started looking outside ourselves to go and look at the world. Like I said, I came up from telesales. I don't know what I'm doing other than what I learned from other people and what I know the business needs. So putting together a picture of what data management can look like with a starting point in theory, with a grounding in what the business does, and with eyes out all the time to see what's working well elsewhere, what are other people doing, what can we co-opt to become part of the way we do things. So the purpose of a data warehouse that we're setting out to achieve, firstly, to describe what happened. How many customers do we have? These simple questions of what is our reality? How do we measure it? A lot of these come up in KPIs, things like that. Secondly, why did it happen? So the what happened, that's the sort of thing you automate. That's the sort of thing you put a dashboard in front of an exec. You put dashboards in front of decision makers across the business, and they can see a clear picture of this is the truth of what's going on right now. Why did it happen starts to get a bit more into the analytics realm, where the manager might, or decision maker might ask one of their people, hey, we got a lot more sales in Auckland Central this week. What did we do there that was different? And that person combines reality. We know we sent some door knockers into that region at that particular time, combines that reality with the data of here is the number, here is the performance results that these agents individually, the sales agents, have had historically. So we put our best agents in there and combines these different, both outside of the system and inside the system, to be able to explain, here is what we did that created success, and those are the things you might want to do again or do more of. The third thing from a data warehouse is what's going to happen. And this is the sexy stuff that everyone in data seems to want to get into. This is the data science, the augmented analytics, the AI, if you want to call it that. And this is the predicting the future based on, we've observed what happened, we have dived in to understand why it happened, and now if we do more of it or change something, this is what's going to happen. So those 3 things are what I'm setting out to achieve in this platform. And they have to be in that order. They have to be first reality, secondly explanation, third prediction. If you try and skip ahead to the sexy stuff, then you're in for a bad time, as I've seen in other businesses and in parts of our business. Now, I draw a really big black line under that, because these are decision support functionalities. These are things that the business needs to know in order to support a decision made by a person to go and do something. Data warehousing is about people. It's about augmenting what we know with more so that we can make evidence-based decisions or evidence-informed decisions. In our previous platform, because this is not the first time we've gone about trying to centralize the company's data. 10 years ago, we built something with similar goals in a on-premise database platform. And we set out with some of these in mind as well, but we added some functionality over time. We didn't hold strict to a definition of what a data warehouse is. And because of that, we've ended up with a platform that it's serving too many purposes to be good at all of them. So some things that we've included in our data warehouse historically is, what are we going to do about it? So let's say we're running a particular email campaign. We have often inside our company taken the great insights that we've had out of our data warehouse, said, great, we know something, let's automate this. And we've had data looping back into the business. So we've learned this type of customer is most likely to respond to this type of email. And rather than copying that logic and putting it all into our customer contact system, we've actually, in some cases, created lists out of our data warehouse and fed them back down. So we're taking old data, because the data warehouse is refreshed daily, we're feeding it back down, even if they've called us in the meantime. So there's always a risk of duplication there. There's risk of, we may have allowed for cleaned up some incorrect data on the way in. That doesn't get fixed if we're looping around through. It takes a while, it's complex. So if there's too many systems involved in feeding that data back into actually sending the email, we're opening ourselves up for risk. If something breaks, we've got 3 teams involved to try and figure out where it went wrong and how to fix it. So by doing that, we've created some complex systems that are just a bit suboptimal. The other thing that we're keeping out of our data warehouse going forward is the process working. So discrepancy management between systems. Trustpower was 10 years ago a successful electricity company. We're now a multi-utility company serving power, gas, phone, and internet across 3 networks. And those systems are managed by those processes are managed by a number of systems. And checking to see if they align with each other would normally be a process for integration of those systems or some sort of API connection. But we've got a lot of those being reconciled inside our data warehouse as well, which has taken the focus away from creating new value for decision makers, and it's put the effort onto just making sure the business keeps on running. And those things need to be kept separate. Otherwise, operations always wins, right? Operations is the thing we need to send the bill out. And if our current data warehouse was turned off, there would be things that would fail around our business, and it should never have been put in that place. So just wanted to start out by separating what we're trying to achieve here with the decision support. This is a really old term from the 80s, early 90s. Decision support system is the thing we're trying to create. So we have an opportunity. Current platform, we've got a big pile of data in the middle with a copy of every system we've got. It's based on those source systems. So when we've got a source system like Salesforce, we've copied all of our Salesforce data into this big pile of data in the middle. It still looks like Salesforce, and every day we update any changes from that into our central store. When it gets used, those pieces are put together inside an analyst SQL query. We end up with these big long SQL scripts that interpret the data out of Salesforce. They combine it with the data from our other systems and produce something that answers the particular question that they're asking. When the next person comes along with a similar question, if they're lucky, they can find the code that the previous person used for their question. But most of the time, they're actually writing a completely new SQL script from scratch. And if they're making allowances in that code for flaws in the source system, flaws in the data, or things they might want to exclude, they're not being copied between systems. And if we want to change one of those things in a source system, there are many, many SQL queries across the business we need to adjust afterwards in order to cope with that change. So it takes a lot of work just to maintain our current state rather than adding. We are modifying quite a lot. So in that initial single source of truth, a lot of that is about actually just having one place to change things when the business changes. So we set out to build a new one with 4 goals in mind. Those 4 goals, firstly, speaking straight to democratization, we want to encourage curiosity. And what that shows up is, if anyone in the business should be able to learn anything about the business, unless there's a good reason why not. So we believe it shouldn't be restricted to a manager asking their analyst, go and find the answer to this and present me a report on Tuesday. It should be anyone here, if they're on the phones, they've noticed a trend that they're being asked about in their particular phone calls in the call center, there should be an easy way that they could dive in, find more evidence of that trend and present it up as, hey, we should do something about this. We're getting 100 calls a week on this thing, and if we fix the cause, it will save us time. So when people are allowed to be curious, it makes us all smarter, it makes us all better off. Secondly, the data should mirror our business. So when I talked about the big pile of copies of all of our systems sitting in a pile in the middle, that's hard to get to insight from. So when every analyst comes out with a question that they want to answer, they're having to understand the source system and the business and the question of the decision maker that's asked them a question. What we should be able to do going forward in order to enable that curiosity is, for anyone that understands the business and understands the question, they should be able to get an answer. It shouldn't matter where the data comes from. So the data should look like we do, not what our systems do. Thirdly, reuse. So when someone learns something, we should be feeding back those learnings into that data warehouse centrally. So if we learn something about accounts, let's say this account has a likelihood of leaving us in the next 3 months because of something we've noticed. If we publish that as a thing we know about our accounts, here's the likelihood of leaving us in the near future, then that's something we can import into every other analysis around the business. So if we're looking at, here are all of our customers in a particular flood zone, we want to do something special for them to make them feel loved. These ones are the ones that have had trouble with us before, that have had something that didn't quite work the way that we would have loved to deliver it. So we might want to be extra careful and put a bit more extra time onto those phone calls while we make those contacts with our customers. And finally, we want a system that will evolve as we change. So this is focusing on, 10 years ago, we were a great New Zealand power company. Now we are across many verticals. We're the 4th largest ISP in New Zealand. So it's been a transformational change in that last 10 years. And the next 10 years is unlikely to slow down. We're not going to look like we do right now in another 10 years. So when we're building a platform to continue investing in, this is not a project, this is a capability. We will keep doing this forever, trying to measure what we do here. We need to make sure that it can be adapted as the business changes. So we can keep on delivering insight, we can tweak pieces, we can add features, and we can change how the relationships of the business happen as they happen, so that this will continue to support us rather than always looking like we did last year or 5 years ago. So we set out a bit over a year ago on this journey, and we engaged some consulting help to teach us some of the collaboration pieces that we needed to start out. This is a cultural initiative. Technology is easy for the reasons that I'll show you shortly. So we pulled in some help, and we pulled in the 10 people across our business that knew the most about our business in the smallest number of people. And these aren't people who have titles. These are people who have moved between multiple roles in our business, and so have context of what we actually do here greater than, here is the hat that I've been given to wear in my current role. So it's people that understand kind of the full picture and the mesh of how the whole thing fits together. And we started to put together these maps of our whole business. Here are the things we do here, here are the things we care about here. And we put a blue post-it on the wall for every single noun in our business and every single process in our business. So these are the things we do inside Trustpower. this picture is about half of what we came out with for our retail area. So it is huge, the things we do here. And there are some post-its up here. One post-it for location. Location is a massive part of a service delivery company. We've got one post-it there for customers. We all have those. We know those are very complex. One post-it for marketing. So behind every one of these, there is a significant amount of work coming. There's a significant amount of complexity. But this is just the high-level spider web of this is what we do here. And we've set out to describe these in the language of what would a normal person on their first day in Trustpower call this. So we're not focusing on this is what we call it, that's what it is, we're measuring today. We're focusing on every new person that turns up should be able to look at what we have without learning the slang of the company and be able to query it and understand from the data what we do here. So we're establishing this for generational cultural change across our business. So we're building a data vault. Data vault can be quite academic in implementation. It's very focused on the auditability, the audit trail right across the business. We've focused on keeping auditability, but we're wanting to deliver it in a way that is very practical and very business focused. So some of the heavy feedback I had from our peers that have taken the journey before is they wished they had focused their effort more on what the business calls things rather than the systems call things. And we've put a lot of effort into that focus on what is useful, what are the things we do here. So the key piece that Data Vault really introduces to the world of data management is rather than going from system to destination, from the systems on the left to what the question of our business is, we're focused on going from the system to the question, but on the way, what are the actual things we do here and how do we create those objects to describe the reusable parts? So we have accounts. Accounts are billable. We provide packages to our customer. There's a phone and broadband package with a single charge on it. And within that package, there are services. We'd never cared about packages as a company before inside our systems. We sell them to customers, but everything was always service focused. So starting to identify there's a thing in the middle that we charge for, but that is different from the individual phone and broadband services that make that up. So really diving into that, building these pieces. And when we ask a new question, who left us? And we put these shared assets around it. Where are they? Who are they? What did they have with us? Those shared assets are available to every future question we ask. So when we want to know who successfully upsold a service, who was upgraded, who is using more internet than what their neighbours might be, we have those same things to cut by around the outside of where are they, who are they, what do they have, that instantly we have more value available than if we'd started with a blank query every time. There's a lot of work goes into that. Those core questions of our business, they take a lot of time to identify. So this is about 3 or 4 workshops worth of work that I put on the screen. I won't talk to the pieces, but it's just getting involved with the people of our business to talk about what it is we actually do here. What would a normal person on their first day in Trustpower call this? And how does it join to everything else? And this model becomes our data vault from which we feed all of the answers, all of the use cases that we present out of this. Lots of business questions, so talking through all of these things. I put a lot on the screen that will be common to almost every business. And we write these questions down early on in the picture in order to make sure that we can answer normal questions from whatever model we build. So these are the tests, if you like. These are our unit tests that we write at stage 1. And then we go in and focus on what are the things we do here, and then check all these unit tests against it to make sure that the model that we've built is sufficient for all of the things that we do here. So that's a whole lot of cultural. My job is cultural. My job is people. Technology can do this stuff, but people is the majority of what we do. So to deliver it, we've got a suite of tools. These are all kind of best fit for purpose rather than one big platform to rule them all. If you think of the Unix approach, lots of little tools that only do one job, but that's what we're trying to achieve here, is the best thing for doing each one of these jobs we are using for that job. So from our source systems, we use a number of ingestion tools. We use Click for pulling data in from Oracle platforms. We use Stitch for pulling data in from API endpoints like Salesforce and Facebook and things like that. And they only have one job. And their job is to go get that data over there, copy it into Snowflake, and keep on doing that forever, and don't charge me too much. So being robust and being commercially viable are really the things we focus on in that layer of just copy all the data, keep it flowing in all the time. And I love tools like this because they are so simple to just point at a source of data and keep on copying it forever. Other tools in the space, I love Fivetran, I love we use a little bit of Azure Data Factory to pull in the odds and ends. It's great for pulling in something in particular that we might want, but it's just go get that data, copy it in, keep going forever. Don't tell me about it unless it breaks. From there, Snowflake is it's basically the brawn that sits behind the whole thing, because it can scale infinitely for whatever we need. If we need an answer to be delivered much faster, it can just do that. And it's off when we're not using it. So it's just sitting there waiting for us to give it problems to answer. Now we have a tool called DBT, which is it's really the instruction set, the brains behind it. So Snowflake is the grunt, it's the brawn. DBT is the brains that tells Snowflake what to do. So across these layers, first off, we store the history of what our systems had. So we have an auditable trail of everything that has ever existed. You may have heard this described in Data Vault as a raw vault. And for every table in our source system, we have history of every record and what it has looked like in the past. So every previous state of a record. From there, we translate up into the vault. And this is basically from what the system calls things into what Trustpower calls things. This is the tables, this is the columns, this is how they relate to each other. And this is where we fill in those things like, is this account likely to leave us in the next 30 days? That's where that gets stored in a calculated piece of that vault. And from there, up into Atlas, that's our internal branding. We're really heavy on the internal branding of this project here to basically say, these are the outputs. This is the map of Trustpower, the thing that holds Trustpower on its shoulders, to use the other picture from the word Atlas. And that transformation step prepares data from the vault, which is already mostly transformed. It basically puts a where statement together to assemble, these are the rows we're looking at right now, and here are the pieces that you need for this use case. This tool has genuinely changed the game for us. So it's open source. It believes that every object in the database is a SQL statement, which means that our analysts, our data users, can write into our engineering stack using their familiar tools. And if they can write a SQL statement, they can contribute a new fact for our data marts. If they can read SQL, they can see everything we've done with the data right from that first replica of source stage. So they can trust what we have, they can tell us when it's wrong, and they can submit changes to it through our change review process. So anybody in the business can contribute right across that stack. It's completely self-documenting. It stores lineage right through that. So when my team are building in there, we're building reusable pieces that can be understood by anyone right across the business. It's also monitoring the ingestion layer. So one of the DBT functionalities is basically checking the freshness. So if one of those ingestion tools falls over, DBT will be the thing that tells us about that as well. Things to celebrate about Snowflake. Free when we're not using it. I like things that are free, and I don't need to set up any sort of scheduling around this. It's not, let's keep it on max from between 8 in the morning and 5 at night. It's just, let's keep it at max, and when somebody queries it, it's just going to run fast and turn itself off again. For however large we need the warehouse to be, we can set that, and we can basically trust it to turn itself on and off when it's needed. More compute, same cost, just faster. I quite like this too, to be honest. So it scales pretty linearly. So when Snowflake is running a query, If I want that query to run in half the time, I can turn up the compute power that it has available to us in the warehouse, and it basically runs at half the time and will cost us the same amount of money. So it's costing us twice as much per minute, but it only takes 1 minute instead of 2 now. So it ends up being very, very cost effective to just get things done faster, and it turns itself off again after. Thirdly, zero copy clones. So with the DBT Snowflake combo, we've actually got a system that can, when we've got a new piece of code to release, we are telling Snowflake, can you copy our entire production? And this is one SQL command. Our entire production environment is copied into a pre-prod environment. So we have a full prod replica basically. And we tell DBT to do that and then run all new code against it. So it's using all our production data in an automated test to make sure that our new code is going to still work in that environment. And we're running unit tests against that to make sure that it's doing what it said it would, which I'll talk about on the next slide a little bit. Finally, time travel. So in Snowflake, it can store a audit of each object inside Snowflake. So this is one of my favorite features. I'm a get in and mess with stuff and then check it out later sort of guy. That's why I'm not the developer. But if I have dropped a table, if I've deleted rows, Snowflake actually stores an undo log up to a month afterwards if we set it to that. So I can go back and undrop a table and pull that data back from beyond the brink and recover anything. So we have a lot more confidence that moving fast, breaking stuff is not irreparable breaks. Things to celebrate for DBT. One tool for everyone, like I spoke to before. Reusable logic, it uses macros. So if there's one piece of code that we use a whole lot of times across our SQL repository, we can put that into a macro. So if we want to change our, let's say, our hashing algorithm, we can do that in one place inside the macro instead of changing the code right across every object in our repository. Continuous integration. I talked about that with the zero clones. So when new code is released by an analyst, we can review it in Git. It's fully Git integrated. That's our release process. We can review it, make sure it meets our code expectations, make sure it's passing its tests, and we can automatically deploy that into prod. Unit testing of data. We've got over 2,000 unit tests in our repository already. And these are very, very simple to write, whether it's saying this field must be unique, this must not be null, this field, if there's something in this field, it must exist in this lookup table over here, or a custom test where we can write SQL as a custom test that has to pass in order to allow our code to release. And we run all of these every day to make sure that any new data still meets those tests. And we run all of these on every release to make sure that we're not introducing new code that will break stuff. And these allow us to move way faster than what we would have been able to otherwise. So by trusting the system to not allow bad code to get out, we can write code much more quickly ourselves. And finally, the built-in lineage. So we can click back through from the object that we're about to change. We can see everything that feeds into that on the way in, and we can see everything that might break if we change it out the other side as well. And that's just part of the system. So that's us. We're building an evidence-based business to focus on actually enabling that curiosity, making better decisions for the way forward. And everyone in the business can feed into this shared resource of everything we know to feed back out to everyone in the business to make decisions on their everyday jobs. So I'm hoping one day to be able to disestablish my team entirely and just focus on ingestion rather than the transformation layer, because the business owns that. That's what we're aiming for. That's what we're heading towards. We've got this shared resource that anyone can use. We can get smarter and we can keep on competing going forward. Thank you very much for listening and enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.